Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a 3UZ. This is from a Toyota Crown and it is a 3UZ 6-speed model. This is going to be a manual application and this one is quite a unique harness. So let's get into it. Right, as I said, this is from a Toyota Crown, so a Japanese one. It is a 3UZ 6-speed model, so it came with a 6-speed automatic gearbox. Obviously, this one's going into a race buggy, and obviously it's a completely brand new harness that we have actually built. It is a bit unique, this one, so we'll go through that as part of the layout. But as it's a brand new harness, let's take a look at what it takes into building one of these harnesses. Right, as you can see there, all brand new wire, all brand new terminals, all brand new grommets, all twisted together nicely and covered in heat shrink for you guys. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all today is, same as usual, we're going to go through the layout of the harness. So we're going to go from the ECU all the way to the engine, show the customer where everything plugs in. Obviously, there's a couple of sub harnesses with these because these are one of our brand new harnesses. So again, down in the bottom in the description, I've got a bunch of videos to show you how to install some of these harnesses because some of them are hidden away and you'll see that when we go through it. Then we're going to do the testing, and it's going to be testing with just the ignition on and with the engine running. So again, split that into two sections for you. All right, so first of all, let's jump to the ECU and we'll start the layout of the harness. Okay, so looking at the ECU, really, really nice and simple. All we've got basically is 1, 2, 3 plugs that go off to the engine. We have 2 plugs that I call the body plugs. They go off there and make their way to the fuse box over there. And also in these body plugs is your accelerator pedal connector. Really nice and simple there, nothing too complicated. All 5 plugs are completely unique, so again, you can't plug them into the wrong place. You don't have to worry about that at all. Okay, moving along to here, and what you're going to notice here is we have an expansion plug. So again, I said it's quite a unique harness, so the customers asked for some optional extras, and we'll go through that as we go through the engine harness over there, but this is where they terminate to, okay? Also coming out the harness over here is going around there and it's plugging into the fuse box on the other side there. Okay, so that's that plug over there. Again, all the plugs in the fuse box are unique. You can't plug the wrong one into the wrong place, so don't stress about that at all. Now, going to the fuse box, we then have this 6-pin plug over here, which contains mainly the OBD2 connector over there, as well as a brake switch. Then we have the 9-pin plug over here, which is our pretty BOGO standard plug. And we'll go through those in a bit, what each and every single one of those wires do. But again, our really standardized 9-pin plug. Right, so then moving along there, so we have all of these sections joining together over here. Then it comes up to here and it goes to a grommet. And as per usual, we've put some heat shrink on there, but we haven't actually shrunk it down so you can move this grommet to where it's most suitable for your application. But you probably notice that this is not coming at the side or the other side. In this particular vehicle, the firewall is actually over here. Okay, so he wants to have the grommet going literally dead center of the engine. So this is designed to come dead center out of the engine over there. Okay, So basically from here, we have another joint section over there, and then it's going to split off to go to this side of the engine. It's going to split off to go to that side of the engine. But first, let's go through the sections that are coming directly out of this grommeted section over here. So first of all, we have ground number 1. Now I've labeled it ground 1 because it goes to bank 1. So remember with these engines, this is bank 1, that is bank 2. Bank 1 has cylinder 1, 3, 5, and 7. Bank 2 has cylinder 2, 4, 6, and 8. So it can either be bank 1 or left bank 2 or right bank. And again, it's easy because it's got cylinder 1 is bank 1 and cylinder 2 is bank 2. So whenever I'm talking about either, coil 1 or injector 1 or injector 2, that's what I'm referring to, which cylinder they are. Okay, so we have ground 1 that goes over there, and we have a corresponding one over here, which is ground number 2. And again, that goes to your little M6 bolt over there and your M6 bolt over there. Okay. Then also coming out here is 2 other sections, and this one is going to be your sub harness. So again, it is labeled over there, okay? This one goes underneath the intake, and I'm actually gonna cut to a photograph now. So there you go, you see that's the overall picture of what it looks like underneath there. But more importantly, the harness goes to the starter solenoid, so that you can see over there. It then goes to knock 1, and it then goes to knock 2. All right, so again, what you guys noticed there from your normal 1UZ and your earlier 3UZ models, this actually has wideband knock sensor. So you see it's a 2-wire knock sensor on there. So again, everything is in there for you guys. You've got shielded cable all the way from there to the ECU, obviously making sure that the signals are not getting interrupted. Next up is going to be your injector. Now, obviously, I refer to this as the injector harness. It's actually the injector and the ACIS. If you want to know what ACIS is, acoustic control induction system, down in the description below, you're going to see a video going into great explanation of what it is. I actually have one of these intakes apart, and you can see exactly how everything works. Okay. Right, so this goes down through there. It goes through the middle over there, and it actually pops out here. And same thing on the other side, it just pops out there and it goes to all the injectors, and there's a plug underneath for the ACIS vacuum solenoid. Again, I do have a video in the description on actually where I show you how to install that entire injector harness, because you do it with the intake off, because you've got to take the intake off to get the sub harness in for the knock and the starter. So at the same time, you install this entire injector harness. And then obviously you put everything back again, and when you put the engine harness in, you just plug everything in. So as you can see, this is a modular harness. The reason we do that is so that you guys can upgrade further along the line. So we are able to get these ECU headers, so we could literally turn this harness to work with any aftermarket ECU you wanted. And in that case, you may want to change your injectors. Well, you can give us a call. We'll send you another harness with different injector plugs on if you would like. If you're going to go with an aftermarket and go turbo, usually what the guys do is they scrap the ACIS. That ACIS valve then opens up the ability to have a MAC boost valve, because it's got 12 volts and ECU controlled ground. So you can then have this going to the injectors and then out as well for a MAC boost valve if you want to go turbo and get rid of the ACIS. Okay, so that's that section over there. Then let's go along here. So this is the one that's going to pop over to the left bank, or bank 1. Have a breakout here at the back, and that's going to go to your ignition left. So again, this can be unplugged for the exact same purposes like the injectors. If you guys want to ever change your coils because you go for an aftermarket ECU, we can just supply you with another sub harness that would plug into whatever coil you wanted. But again, this is going to be ignition 1, ignition 3, you can't see those, but that's ignition 5, and that's ignition 7. Okay. The harness then carries along there. We have another breakout section over there, and that's going to go to your cam sensor, what we call VVL. Now, the reason I call it VVL is on the 3UZ and 1UZ VVT-i engines, you actually have 3 cam sensors. You have one here, you have one on the inlet cam on the other side, and then you have one at the front, which we're going to get to in a minute. Now, the one in the front just has a single tooth that it uses to reference for synchronization of the engine. Okay, so that tells the ECU when to fire the spark plugs and the injectors. These two, on the other hand, this one and the other one on the inlet bank, they're for VVT-i. Okay, so they're to monitor what the actual ECU is commanding is being done on the cam itself. So these, unlike the one at the front, actually have 3 different size teeth per rotation. Same on both sides over there. So these can then give you a much more accurate position of the cam, because remember, the VVT-i on these engines is obviously advancing or retarding the cam. So the ECU wants to know whatever degrees of advance or retard that it is asking for is actually being achieved. So that's what these cam sensors are here for, to do that. Okay. Right, so moving along, the harness runs along there. We have another breakout over here, and that goes to your oil control valve. So again, this is for the VVT-i, so it does it via oil pressure, controls the advance and retard of the cam. Then the harness carries on along there, but at that same breakout there, we have the front cam sensor. So again, everything's nicely labeled for you guys there, but that is the front cam sensor. This is the one I told you just uses a single tooth in conjunction with the crank sensor, and that tells you exactly what position the engine is in, okay? Moving along the harness, clips there and there. Again, these are not the proper clips. These are just ones I have because they're easy to pull apart because I'm taking harnesses off and on. As we go past that, we get to another breakout point over there. So there's a few sections that are coming out, and this is the first of those extras that the customer wanted, okay? So first of all, you can see here we have oil. Now this is a 3-pin DTM connector. The customer wanted to put his own oil pressure sensor on, so we've added this in, and that's what goes to that expansion harness over there. Also coming out here is going to be your primary Lambda for the left bank. Okay, so that's your O2 sensor over there. Obviously, normally the standard harness brought it down there, but it gets really close to the exhaust, so we bring it down here so it can stay well clear of the exhaust and keep your connectors alive for much longer and help your wiring to stop melting. Now, there's 2 sections that go through over there. You'll see a very, very thin one. So although the customer is actually putting in his own oil pressure sensor, we have still included the oil pressure switch. So again, that's labeled as oil. So that's the oil pressure switch that comes standard on the 3UZ engine. So that is still connected on there. And then lastly, down here, we have our crank sensor. Okay, so that goes directly into there. Again, all nicely shielded cable to make sure there's no interference with your signals over there. Okay, so that's this side of the engine done. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to nip around the other side over there, and we're going to carry on the other side. Right, so again, exactly the same as the other one. It's going to split off, go down here. We have our first breakout at the back here. That's going to go to our right ignition. So again, that plugs in over there, and that's going to give us obviously coil 2, coil 4, coil 6, and coil 8. Okay, so again, that is a separate harness altogether. And if you follow the rest of the harness, that comes along there. We have the exact same breakout over here where it goes to the VVR cam, so variable valve timing right bank. Okay, right, and the harness carries on a little bit further, and it breaks out here at the front by injector 2. We then have the throttle harness, so that comes off and again goes to a separate harness that goes off to the throttle body. So again, 6-speed, so we know it's 6-speed because we've got the 6-pin plug on this side and not the 4-pin plug and the 2-pin plug like you would on a 5-speed throttle. Now, as I've shown you in the past, on standard management, you are actually able to swap these throttles out, which is another reason why we put them on a separate sub harness. So if you can't get a 6-speed throttle, you can get a 5-speed throttle. Phone us up, we'll chuck you a 5-speed throttle sub harness, and you can plug a 5-speed throttle in. But also, if you change over to aftermarket and you want to fit a Bosch throttle body, well, guess what? We can just phone us up. We'll make you a harness to go from there to a Bosch throttle body, or whatever throttle body you want, basically. It really, really doesn't matter. Right, next up we have coolant temperature. So that's CLT over there. So that's the 2-wire sensor over there. Now, you guys with the 3UZ, don't get confused. You won't have the sensor here. You'll actually have just like a little bolt that blocks that off. Perfectly normal. That's how the 3UZs came. It's a legacy thing left over from a 1UZ Crown that didn't have MPX data and would send coolant temperature to the dash. So I'm utilizing that hole because sometimes I use this coolant temperature sensor for the dash on my other 3UZ harnesses where we've tested it. Now, you're going to see that that little temp wire is missing, but it's not. Here it is. But in this case, it's a 2-pin sensor there that the customer wanted. So again, that makes its way to the expansion plug over there. So we have the temp 2-wire and the oil pressure with the 3-wire there. So that's the extras the customer wanted to add in. So remember, guys, little stuff like this, we can always add into harnesses. It's not a major issue at all, okay? Next up, coming out here, we then have our MAF sensor. Hopefully I can see that over there. There you go. Right, so in this case, 3UZ 6-speed, it's using the small little MAF like that. A lot of modern Toyotas have these sort of mass airflow sensors over there. Again, I put a bunch of part numbers down in the description, things like MAFs and what models they apply to. So again, you should be able to find your correct MAF sensor. But at the end of the day, the easiest thing to do is take your ECU, look at the part number, go on Toyo DIY. It'll tell you exactly what year and model you have, but you can go in there, go into the air cleaner section, and in there you'll find the part number for your mass airflow sensor that's applicable to your 3UZ engine, okay? So always make sure you get the right one for your engine, okay? Next up, coming out here, we're going to have our oil control valve. Okay, so again, that is for the right bank. So again, same as the other side, just using oil pressure to control the cam on this particular side. Just remember, VVT-i is only on the inlet cams, not on the exhaust cams. On the exhaust cams is obviously left over for the next generation. So the URs and the GRs, they actually had 4 oil control valves, 2 on each bank, and they would control not only the inlet, but also the exhaust cam as well. Okay, then lastly, coming down over here, we're then going to have another breakout over here to the alternator plug. Now, obviously, this is a crown. So this alternator on a crown is actually controlled via the ECU. Now, in this case, the customer has his own alternator that he wants to fit in. So again, just to make sure the harness is usable by someone else if he wants to set it on, I have included all the wiring for the alternator in there, and we've just obviously blanked it off with this DTM connector over here. Lastly, coming down here, we then get our last O2 sensor, and that is for this side over here. Now, if you've noticed, on a 3UZ, it's a long wire on the right bank, and it's a short wire on the left bank. Now, there are 2 different part numbers for that. Again, everything is down in the description for you. But please make sure you do get it correct, because the wiring between these and these on the actual sensor side is different. So the wiring in the plug in terms of which pin does what is the same on there, but the wiring in the sensor itself is different. So if I try to put this long wired sensor on the other side, I'm going to get an error for the heater circuit on there, and it's not going to work. Okay, so please make sure you get long one for this side, short one for the other side. Okay. Right, so last thing I want to do is go through all of the wires over there, but I see that I've missed off my little sheet telling me what all the wires do, so just bear with me a second and I'll be back with that printout. Right, guys, so we are back. I've got my little printout there so we can go through it. I know them all by heart, but obviously I like to have it in front so you guys can pause the screen and you can take a look and see what everything does. So, as I said earlier, the 6-pin plug is basically only the OBD2 connector plus the brake switch, which is over there, so you don't need to worry about that too much. This is our 9-pin plug, so again, if you've seen our harnesses before, this is going to be very, very, very similar. But basically, pin number 1 is going to be red. That is a permanent 12-volt supply. Now, I must stress with this particular case with the standard ECUs, it does need to be a permanent 12-volt supply. The reason I say that is because it stores all the codes. The second you remove permanent 12 volts from the ECU, it deletes all diagnostic codes. So it's going to make diagnosing an issue incredibly difficult if you do not have that connected to permanent 12 volt supply. Now, as this is going into some sort of race vehicle, I appreciate that, but obviously you will have a battery cutoff when you're not using the vehicle. That is absolutely fine. But what you will do is you will still connect that to what would be a permanent 12 volt supply and not the ignition 12 volt supply that you'd be using with either your key or your button or whatever you're using in your vehicle. So please make sure you do that, okay? Number 2 is black yellow, and that's a start signal. Super, super simple. That just literally needs to be fed at 12 volts, okay? So again, you'll see me do that later on. I'll touch it on there and I'll feed it 12 volts. So again, if you're using a key barrel, you can find that 12 volts at the back of your key when you turn the key to the start position. If you're using a button, one side of the button needs to go to 12 volts and the other side needs to go to our black with the yellow wire. Super simple. Number 3 is yellow-green. Now, in this case, the customer's not actually using that. It's not even connected at all. But again, we make all of these fuse boxes standardized. So this would work for any other crown harness. It doesn't necessarily have to be for this particular harness. So again, all of that is put in there. But in this case, the customer, that's not actually connected to anything at all. Number 4 is going to be gray. So again, you can see the gray one over here. Obviously, I've got it plugged into my fuel pump. Again, that's part of the testing procedure to make sure that all works. But effectively, that's going to supply a 12 volts for your fuel pump. Now, that is controlled by a relay there, which is controlled by the ECU. And again, in the description, I've got a video on how the fuel systems work. So please go ahead and watch that. It's really, really useful to know because there's certain things like on some models, it doesn't prime and et cetera, So I get phone calls like, oh, internal ignition on the fuel pump doesn't prime. Sometimes that's perfectly normal. So again, go watch it down below. It explains in great detail on how the fuel systems work. So it'll answer all your questions there. Number 5 is yellow with a red, which is that one over there. And that's your check engine light. So I've got it hooked up to my dash there so we can see the check engine light when we turn the key on. Then number 6 is going to be yellow, and that's the yellow over there. That's the tacho. That's also connected to our cluster over there, so we're going to be able to see the actual rev counter working when I start the engine up, which is brilliant. Number 7 is black with a red tracer. That is going to be your ignition 12 volts. Okay. Now again, this is the one you want to connect to your key. Obviously, in this case, it's a race car. He's probably going to have like a push button ignition or a flip switch ignition or a start. But if you guys are using an ignition barrel, please be aware that there is accessory and there is ignition, and they do very different things. So when you're looking for a 12 volts back of a key barrel, what you want to do is find a 12 volts when the key is in the ignition position. But then what you want to do is you want to turn it to the start position and make sure that 12 volts stays. What happens to accessory is it cuts the power to accessory when you go to crank the car. So if you ever got into a car before and when you go to crank the car over, the radio turns off and all that, those are connected to accessory 12 volts. So as soon as the key moves to the start position, ignition 12 volts remains having 12 volts, but accessory turns off. You can see what would happen there if you connect that to accessory. Every time you go to crank the car engine would turn over, but obviously you're shutting down the ECU and you're shutting down the entire fuse box, so nothing would work. And it would drive you insane because the second you let go of the key, everything would come back on again. Check engine light, everything would come back on again, and you'd think you're going mental. So please make sure, and it happens more than you think, but please make sure with that one is an ignition 12 volts and not an accessory 12 volts. Next up is number 8, pink and blue. And again, as I said, we have put the alternator 4-pin DTM connector in the harness. The customer, in this case, is not going to be using it. So that one, again, is not going to be connected to anything at all. Okay. Now then, for those guys who do have our harnesses, and obviously you do have an alternator light wire on your system, please be aware, guys, that this goes directly to the alternator. It doesn't go anywhere else. Okay, in some cases we do send it to the ECU, but that's mainly the plug and play ones. But most importantly, when you are fitting it into your vehicle, if you've got a dash and you're going to connect it to there, that's usually fine. There's built-in diodes in the dash, not a lot of feedback. But if you're going to use your own incandescent bulb, sometimes you need to make sure that you put a diode in to make sure there's no feedback from the 12 volts. I've seen it before where it feeds back through that wire through the alternator, and alternator also has an ignition 12 volts and it feeds back through there into the fuse box and it keeps it alive. So please be aware of that. And lastly, number 9 is yellow with a black, which is connected to my LED over there, and that is going to be oil pressure switch. So again, that's the standard one that comes on the 3UZ. So I'm just testing it to make sure it works. So when we start the engine, the LED will go off, and that tells me that everything is absolutely fine. Right, so that is everything in relation to the layout of the harness, and hopefully that is really nice and easy and simple for the customer to put together when he gets it on his vehicle. Okay, so as I said, next up we're going to do the testing of the harness, and we're going to start with the ignition on test, and then we're going to move over to the engine running test. So bear with me a second while I do that. Right, guys, so we are back again for the testing part of the harness. As I said, part with just the ignition on and with the engine running. So let's do a quick view over of what we're going to be testing. All right, so in this case, with the ignition on, we're going to be testing the check engine light. So we're going to pop over to the dash and make sure that turns on. We also have a check engine light in the fuse box there as well, because I know you guys get eager and want to get it done. So I've put a check engine light in the box so you can make sure everything is 100%. Charge alternator light, obviously not applicable in this case because he's got no alternator connector, or he's going to get his own alternator. Oil pressure, just going to make sure that LED goes out. Well, actually, I'll disconnect the switch so you can see that does go out. OBD2 test, we're going to go over to our laptop and we're going to use GTS, and we're going to make sure it all connects and everything. Obviously, I've done it already, but we're going to make sure that's working now for the test. Fuel pump, I'm then going to use the GTS on the laptop to actually activate the fuel pump so you can hear that working. Again, it is controlled via the ECU in this particular case. The brake switch, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to then provide 12 volts to this. Then you're going to hear the relay click, and then you're actually going to see the STP or brake light switch go from off to on the laptop. That tells me that everything is working. Then gear selector shifter wire, okay, that's obviously only for auto, so that's not applicable. On the engine running side, we have the starter circuit. So again, that is relatively simple. Basically, what I'm going to do is take the black with the yellow tracer wire. I'm going to give it 12 volts, and the engine should crank over and start. Perfect. The ACIS test, basically what we're looking for is at the back of the engine here, we've got our ACIS valve, okay? So again, if you've watched the video, you'll know exactly what's going on in here, but all we're looking for is this to do that. So it should do that a few seconds after startup. So all we're going to do is pan the camera over, and we're going to make sure that has happened. Drive-by-wire test, well, that's super simple. All we're going to basically do is rev the engine. Nothing too complicated there. Oil control valve test. Okay, so in the GTS software, I can test both oil control valves. You'll see exactly what's going on when I do the test. Obviously, just advanced and retards the cam, so the engine sounds really lumpy. So that's basically what we're looking for. It's going to go lumpy when I test bank 1. It's going to go lumpy when I test bank 2. Okay. Injectors and coils, nice and simple. I'm just going to pull each injector out one by one. Boom, boom, boom. And it's going to tell me if the engine misfires, that I can see exactly that every single cylinder is firing as it should do. Then we're going to go to tacho. So basically all I want to do is I want to see that that tacho is actually doing a reading, and I'll probably rev the engine as well, just so you can see it go up and down. Don't worry about the actual accuracy. This is a clock for a 6-cylinder. Now all the UZs, whether it be 1UZ or 3UZ, all give out a 4-cylinder signal. So it's going to be slightly off. But again, I'm not worried about the actual correctness of the, I just want to make sure that it is actually working, okay? Coolant temp, not applicable. Again, we normally add a single wire to go into a temperature sensor on the side there, but the customer's opted for his own. And so therefore, obviously, that's all going to this plug over here. So again, he'll take care of that all on his side. And finally, diagnostics. As with all our 3UZs, this ECU has been remapped for a manual, so we've got rid of the entire automatic gearbox altogether. So what we'll do is we're going to check all the codes and make sure that we shouldn't have anything on there in terms of gearbox, etc. We shouldn't have anything for secondary Lambda sensors. We're only using the primary Lambda sensors. None of that should be on there, so we should have, you should be able to see when we start the engine up, we'll have no check engine light on there. And when we look over there, we may get some misfire codes where I pull the injectors out, but that's perfectly fine. What we're looking for is anything gearbox related or anything else that has been remapped out of the ECU. Obviously, the remap doesn't just get rid of codes. We do increase the throttle response. We get as much power as we can out of it. Again, it's not life-changing amounts of extra power, but yeah, a little bit there, especially down low, which is quite nice. And that's about it. Okay, right, so let's get into the testing with the ignition on straight away. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly put the camera down here and hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Let's see if I can, nope, it's not gonna go low enough there. All right, oh, that's not ideal. Right, anyway, okay, so all I'm basically going to do now is I'm going to take my black with a red wire and I'm going to feed it 12 volts. Okay, so as you can see on there, the first test is the check engine light. So you can see we've got a nice bright LED there and we have our check engine light on our dash. Don't worry about it being a little bit dim. That's normal with the 3UZ 6-speeds. They're not designed for incandescent bulbs, which is what's in these older generation clusters. So you can see the LED is nice and bright, but if you had an incandescent bulb, it would be kind of dim. So again, if you guys are coming into that with a 3UZ 6-speed, change that for an LED bulb, okay? Next up is going to be oil pressure. So at the moment, I've got my light on. All I'm gonna do now is disconnect my oil pressure. You'll see my LED goes off. I'm going to plug that back in again and you're going to see my LED comes back on again. Perfect. So that tells me that the wire from there, the yellow with the black, all the way to the oil pressure switch on the engine is 100%. Right, OBD2 test. Let's get it done. So I'm just going to move over to here to the laptop. Let's wake her up. Okay. Right, so here we are. So again, this is our new GTS, well, it's not new GTS software. It is just the GTS software. So this is, again, a nice, easy thing that you guys can use at home. It costs €7 for the day, or you can do it for a week or a month or a year. And it basically gives you access to the entire up-to-date Toyota and Lexus diagnostic software. So again, you can do pretty much anything that a dealer can do, which is really, really nice. And €7 a day. It's about the price of an OBD2 dongle, but again, you still need an OBD2 dongle to work with it. I use a Tatrix Open Port 2 on that one over there, and that seems to work absolutely fine. So you can see there, that is a Tatrix Open Port 2. Again, I can't vouch for any other ones, but again, that one works absolutely fine on there. Okay, right, let's let this thing let me just, I think when it went to sleep, it is all gone mad. Right, okay. We're gonna open up a new session there. Right, what I'm gonna do is All right, so the rest of it is all with the diagnostics tool. All right, let me get this sorted. Oh, hang on. No, there we are. Nice and easy. Right, so this will be a little thing to show you how it works, but again, really, really straightforward. I can connect to vehicle. I can just put in my own VIN. It's not really relevant. You can put your VIN of your vehicle in obviously as well. You'll see it automatically selects a lot of the stuff for you. And there we go over there. Now obviously CAN is a lot faster than the old K-line communications. This actually goes through relatively quickly. And once you get through there, you can it obviously pre-populates a lot of it for you. As part of the remapping process, obviously it gets changed from a Crown to a GS430, but that's basically the same thing. Okay, so again, we can go into data list over here, and hopefully you can see, but we've got 33.1 degrees on coolant temperature. What have we got? Coolant temp 33, engine. Basically, we got loads of data here. It's all live data here, so it's relatively straightforward. Okay. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into active test. So the first thing I want to test is the fuel pump. So again, let's go into there. So again, we can turn the fuel pump on and off from this particular thing. There you go. You can hear the pump in the background there. And there, I turn it off over there, so that is fantastic. Okay. Right, so let's go back to data list, and I think I've set up a testing one over there. Yeah, much better, much better. Okay, so you can see we've got stoplight switch over there, and it is currently set to off. So I'm gonna quickly move over here. And effectively, all I'm gonna do is basically connect this white with a blue wire there. And I'm going to give it 12 volts. That's imitating you pressing your brakes. And you can see that now gone to on. If I let it go, it goes to off. Okay, so basically that's all the testing I want to do with the ignition on. I know it's very short and sweet, but what we'll do now is let's pop over and we're going to come back and we're going to do the test with the engine running once I get my ear defenders on. So, see you in a second. Right, so I'm back again. I got my ear defenders on because I said I don't want to go deaf. So again, quick recap of what we're going to be doing. Start a circuit, touch the wire and the engine cranks over. That's all I want to know. ACIS, we're going to pop over to the back of the engine and make sure that valve closes. Drive-by-wire, I'm just going to rev the engine on the accelerator pedal there. Oil control valve, we'll go back to the laptop and we'll get that test done. Injectors and coils, I'm going to go around the engine and pull each injector off one by one, make sure it misfires. Tacho, we'll come back to the dash over there and make sure the tacho is working. And then lastly, we'll go through the diagnostics and make sure we've got absolutely zero codes on the ECU. So without further ado, I'm going to take my black with the yellow tracer wire and give it 12 volts. There you go. Okay, so ACIS. Fantastic. So that's gone down over there. Drive-by-wire test. fuel pump connected, there's your answer. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to DTC, or diagnostic trouble codes. And as you can see, we have got absolutely 0 diagnostic trouble codes, which again backs up what we see on the dash, because obviously we saw the check engine light go off both on the fuse box and on there. So again, we've remapped everything to suit this particular application. Okay, so everything that's on this harness that's connected electronically sensor-wise is required. If there's a problem with one of those particular sensors, then the check engine light will come on and it will tell you so. Okay, so again, don't ignore that. You know, if a check engine light comes on, there is actually a problem that needs to be dealt with, okay? Right, so in terms of diagnostics, obviously we've got our OBD2 interface over there. You're gonna plug into exactly like I've done over there. Now, unfortunately, there's no option to bridge TC and E1, read the check engine light through the flashing codes like the old style ones. So you are gonna be limited to that over there, okay? Now, again, I've got a bunch of videos down below with a bunch of weird things like, you know, incorrect MAF position, PCV tubing, and whether you're running a MAF or so. I've got loads and loads of videos. I've got a playlist called The More You Know as well, where I go into little things. So as a quick reminder, guys, if you've got something weird that you can't quite figure out, let me know. If I can recreate the problem on my side here, I will actually do a video explaining what that problem is, why it's caused, and how to rectify it, obviously, as well. Okay, but anyway, let's get this harness packed up off to the customer so he can get it in his truck and get driving. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to comment below. You can find us on Facebook at Phoenix Engine Management, or you can email us at info@phoenixenginemanagement.com. Okay, if you'd like anything similar like this, and please be aware, guys, like this setup over here, where, especially with these type of harnesses, when we do build new, we can kind of do whatever you want. So let us know. We can always discuss certain things. It might add a bit of time on because I've actually got to go and take a design and change it and etc. But anyway, like we've done here, we've added the wiring in for an oil pressure sensor and his own temperature sensor that he wants to add in. Again, all doable, no real problem at all. But thanks for watching, guys. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light. Ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna